Like they'd turn down the NIT. Let's get to some Braves talk. Let the madness begin, folks. It is March. March Madness is here. The NIT is here. The NCAA tournament, NCAA fuckery. It's all here. Welcome to Braves Talk, everybody. It is a overcoming a cold. Iceman Matt Frates, that's the coach. Brad Powell, and of course the ever-loving PGOG Rick Powell. How we doing, fellas?
Iceman, doing well. Sorry, everybody, for the delay, man. You know how it goes. That's just what we do here. Happy to be here with everybody. Excited to be in the postseason. It's not where we want to be, but it's where we are. So let's go win this damn thing. Dad, how you feeling about the Braves in the NIT?
About the Braves, I'm feeling great. About your technology advances. I don't know. Questionable.
Always with the positive outlook.
Yeah, I won't go into it. I won't bore you guys with my lack of IT skills.
He will.
But we're here. We here.
That's right. We are here. So we are almost out of March somehow. This season kind of flew by, but let's recap what has happened since our last show, which, by the way, another shout out to BU Dave. It was a wonderful time, and hopefully we can recreate that magic here without somebody as wonderful as a guest as he is. Actually, we've had a lot of great guests this year. Hopefully we'll have more, but let's talk about Arch Madness. Now, look, the Braves came up short in the title game. They had what I would consider a pretty decent showing throughout the entire tournament, but much like last year, didn't get the job done. I know a lot of people were feeling a certain way, but I want to take some positives out of it. First things first, I wasn't there, but what I do understand is that Braves Nation really showed out in St. Louis. I think one of the best things of the entire weekend, if you can take a silver lining, is all the people in the chat getting to meet each other. People like Brad, Rick, getting to meet some people. I thought that was great. So I want you guys to talk about Arch Madness. Obviously, we don't need to dwell on the result, but it is what it is, and it's something we're talking about.
Yeah, Arch Madness was exciting. It always is. I'm happy that the Braves stuck it out to Sunday, so I got the chance to go down and enjoy all the festivities. Took my daughter for the first time down to experience it. She was really, what's that?
So that was fun.
Yeah, she was really, really excited about it and had a lot of fun. And Ballpark Village was great, man. Getting to meet some people again in person. Joey, obviously Kevin was there, and then Matt Russ, Chris Gontos, had a shot with Dave and Joey. We did the shot we talked about. We got that done. I think Connor came up, met Aaron Ferguson, got a chance to say hi to Tony. So it was nice to kind of get some, put some faces with some names. I mean, obviously, know what you guys look like or whatever, just but nice to spend some time talking and things like that, sharing the passion that is Bradley basketball. And Ted Conley, Ted's another one, met Ted. So tons of excitement. Great to see so many Braves fans there. It's stupid, they shoved all the Bradley fans up in the balcony, up in the top. I mean, maybe it's the one seed gets the main floor, but I mean, Bradley had so many more people there than Drake.
It was 3-1, 4-1.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And yeah, the same way in the arena. Definitely outnumbered the Drake fans. Unfortunately, things didn't go our way, despite a strong start. I thought we came out and we played well early, but when you have the drought that we had to start the second half, it's really tough to battle back against a good team like Drake. But here we are. We're ready for the postseason. We're not where we wanted to be, but we're where we are, and we're gonna take care of business. Dads, any thoughts on Arch Madness before we move on too far?
I just enjoyed meeting everybody. Now, I'm not going to name them off just like Brad just did, because I'm an old guy and I tend to forget.
Time out.
Anyway,
first of all, hey, you name the entire conference whenever we ask you who you're worried about when it's coming into Arch Madness. You can throw out a couple of names here or there, can't you, buddy?
Ted, Dave.
I know. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. But anyway, you get beyond that, I'm starting to get lost, because I was just enjoying. I was just soaking in the atmosphere at Ballpark Village, soaking in the atmosphere prior to the game tipping off in the arena, enjoying it with the granddaughter. Riley went, and It was her first time ever being in something, a thing, an event like that, and she was soaking it in too. She was enjoying it. She'd have loved, obviously, too, to come out with the win, but that's just what happens from time to time. Go ahead.
For sure. No, I mean, I think that, we saw those of you who were in the group chat, there was plenty of chatter about some of the extracurriculars that occurred between Bradley fans and Drake fans.
That was a little boisterous.
Yeah. Yes, you were. We won't spend any time on that. But always a good experience. Nice to make it to Sunday 2 out of the last 3 years. This is a program that's on the rise, and we're seeing that consistently, which is good. And we'll talk more about that as we get into the NIT, but a team that, we see these teams that catch lightning in a bottle a little bit. Josh Church's Indiana teams. There's been several teams at Drake, kind of one and done head coaches, may have one right now, even possibly, that come out, have a great year, coach moves on, and typically the way it works is things tend to regress. But a lot of the good programs we've seen in the Valley that have had staying power they have sort of slowly built up to that level of consistent success. And like I said, I don't want to dig too far into it now. We can talk more about that as we get into the NIT situation. And I think that's where we are, right? So the Braves, despite some rumors that floated around early in the week, the Braves accept a bid to the NIT. And I will say, I mean, kind of the part about that, if I'm being completely honest, that bothered me a little bit is the coach sort of started those rumors on the post-game show. I mean, he was like, we'll see, and and I get it. It's an emotional moment. I think, probably could have been said differently, just like, hey, we're not thinking about that right now, so on and so forth, and then move on from it. But, he kind of, he left that out there, created the doubt. And then when, it was finalized, it was like, everybody can settle down now. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay. That's fine. And I'm sure it was kind of said tongue in cheek, but he kind of put that doubt out there into the universe. And you know what fans are going to do? We're going to run with it.
Yep.
We are. But to be fair, it's hard when you play an emotional game, you coach an emotional game, and then you have to sit in front of microphones. Like the three of us get to do this when we're not emotional. I mean, we get emotional here, but we don't have to do it. We don't do it immediately. Like imagine if the three of us had gotten on immediately after the Drake loss. It would have been a completely different show than what we're doing now. And so Coach Wardle is an emotional guy, wears his emotions on his sleeve. We see it on the court. We see it off the court. He's not really a media guy. And so you get asked a pointed question after a tough loss that I'm sure he's frustrated by. And sometimes you're going to get a snarky answer. And I don't know if it's a snarky answer, but it wasn't an answer that he probably would have given had maybe he had a day to think about it. You know what I mean? And I don't know about you guys, but like if they had turned it down, that to me just feels bad for business. And I just don't think that the business side of it would allow for them to do that.
Yeah, I agree. The turn it down. We're starting to get into that period of time. The evolution of basketball, the way times are now, the teams are pulling out of that. But I gotta get back to what Coach said. Ask that same question, and he has answered questions like this very similar to this way. We are hurting from the loss. We're going to absorb what's happening now. We'll work on, making any further comments on the NIT in a few days. Let us sit and absorb what we've just experienced. That would have, because there's no leading, no leading answers to, even give a hint that you're going to decline an NIT, in saying it. Hey, there's meaning in words and the way you put them together, and but hey, we're done past that. We've accepted the NIT. We're going to look positive. There's another issue which we're not even going to talk about as far as players wise. We're not even going to mention one individual's name, period. But we're just going to move on in a positive direction. Baltimore. We're going to kick shit out of Northern Alabama tomorrow night, and we're going to go on and win this thing.
Did I just play the outro? Because that's pretty much the end of the episode.
That's it. That's it. I think, I don't want to belabor the doubt about the NIT. We kind of ran it in the ground, and that's fine. On to the NIT. Northern Alabama tomorrow night. Carver Arena is also at ESPN Plus for those of you who cannot make it to Peoria. The biggest thing I think about this game, other than us getting to watch this team play one more, is this is going to be a great opportunity for some of these young guys and others on the team. Obviously, I think you're going to see some expanded minutes from Jaquan Johnson. And then, the two big ones that have been floating around are obviously Demarion Birch and Timothy Vandernap. So, those two guys getting a good amount of playing time, seeing what the future looks like, at Bradley. And I know that's something. I think some other guys that have been mentioned, obviously Connor Dillon, it'd be nice to see him, be able to, put the exclamation point on his college career and his time here in Peoria with a nice run through the NIT, assuming and all indications seem that he's going to be healthy enough to play and play a meaningful amount. And so looking forward to what he's able to bring to the table as well. Dad, I know you're really excited about, maybe these opportunities to see Birch and Vandernap play.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Birch is going to shine tomorrow. I really do. I think, in listening to what the yesterday's radio show with Coach Wardle saying when he, spoke to Birch about picking up more minutes time, possibly even, I don't think he said, anything about possibly starting, but I'm going to assume that's where he's going to go. And he said, Coach said his face just lit up. And, we all know, I think, O is a emotional guy. I think he's, really going to come out and put his heart into playing tomorrow night. And I think Meta's going to, I think Hannah's going to, Duke's going to, CD's going to. Yeah, it's so bad for Northern Alabama.
Yeah, and maybe so. And I'm glad you mentioned Duke because I want to, in my opinion, and we didn't need this to make this claim, but Duke has 1000% solidified himself as an all-timer at Bradley.
Right.
Just as a leader, as a teammate, as a person, as a man in the community, across the board. And from the quotes we saw in the paper, some of the other things that were floated around about members of the roster and Duke's name, Duke was never in doubt. Nobody ever had a doubt in their mind that Duke was going to play in this game. And he definitely, I think, really drove that home with his quotes in the Journal Star. And Kevin's got a good point there in the chat. 1-3 to break the all-time record. That's impressive, man. That's extremely impressive. And so I'm super excited that we get an opportunity to watch Duke Dean play again. And Christian Davis and some of these other guys, but what Duke has done for this program, and there's the amount of minutes he's played, some of the stuff he's played through, just the overall effort and leadership. I think as fans, we're indebted to Duke Dean forever for what he's done for Peoria and Bradley University. So really excited about that. And Dad, I don't know if you want to expand on Duke at all before we kind of move forward a bit.
Yeah, well, as far as for tomorrow night's game, Duke is Duke, and he's really brought so much to Peoria and Bradley University and Bradley basketball team. Such a good example as a leader on and off the court. I know he's had a rough couple weeks, but we're playing Valley games. Valley teams know him, and the scheme was to shut him down. Northern Alabama is not going to necessarily know that. They're going to read it, but they're, till you experience it and attempt, no, you're going to be lost, and he's going to burn you. And so we'll bully. It's going to be fun tomorrow night. I can't wait. I really can't. I think it's just going to be a fun, enjoyable game as a Bradley fan to watch. Indiana State at home type of game.
Yeah, we could only hope so. And kind of what I alluded to earlier, I think that, this, even though we're not where we want to be, this is still something that can be viewed as a step forward for the program. Getting into the NIT, winning some games, potentially making it to the Final Four or, contending for the championship here is a big step forward for this program. I remember, I think Loyola had some good runs, a couple times in the NIT before they kind of broke through in the NCAA a little bit. Wichita State, I remember them winning the NIT, I think, kind of early on before they really exploded onto the national scene. And so it's kind of one of these things where I think this is a normal progression that you see in programs that really establish this long-term sustained success and not this, 1 year lightning in a bottle situation. And so I think it's a good sign, especially if things go the way that we think they're going to go here over the next few weeks with Bradley and the NIT. And the best part is we get to see potentially Bradley plays some teams that I think all of us would, just dream of them having on the schedule. And that's, once we get past Northern Alabama, you're looking at potentially a date with George Mason. I'd consider them sort of a mid-major powerhouse, dare I say, over the last couple of decades. And then
It's from my house, by the way.
there you go. Hey, dude, the game would be at George
I
Mason.
know.
That's where it would be. And I'm
What I'm
sure
saying.
there'd be a few Bradley fans that'll make the trip.
Mm-hmm.
There you
It's
go.
20 minutes from my
man,
house.
Are you busy this weekend? Like, I'm rooting for that to happen so you could maybe go.
Depends on what
That'd
time.
be fantastic.
We do have a kid birthday party on Saturday, but if it's Sunday, it's very possible. So if people are going to be in the area, I could possibly be there because, like I said, it's 20 minutes down the road.
It's a good time to indoctrinate James into Bradley basketball fandom.
Very big into pro
wonderful.
wrestling right now. Basketball is a tough sell.
And then a potential date with Dayton, to go to the Final Four. And I mean, and there's other good teams there on the top half of the bracket. Dayton, I think Kevin mentioned Middle Tennessee looks like, they're given, who would that be? I got the bracket here just so I can pretend to speak intelligently about it. Chattanooga. Or was he saying that Middle Tennessee's on the ropes to Chattanooga? I'm trying to look and see. Okay, that's fine. I mean, and that's one thing too by this time of year is you don't know who's showing up motivated to play necessarily in these tournaments. I think that's just the nature of the beast, especially some of these good mids where you got guys getting phone calls about how much money they can make if they go play here or there. Plenty of distractions going on, coaches potentially moving on, things like that. They could all be factors in how these teams perform. But I will say this. I mean, there's some good teams on the right side of the bracket, both top and bottom. But I feel like the left side of the bracket of the NIT is stacked. You got, I mean, of course, some of this is name recognition, like, sub 500 Oklahoma State. But, you got SMU over there. North Texas is always a really solid mid-major program who I believe has won the NIT before here recently. Georgia Tech, again, not a great record, but a good team out of the ACC. They're out. They already got beat. There you go. And by Jacksonville State, the old Cox gave them a go. So St. Joe's, UAB, two teams that both had good years. Santa Clara, how sweet would it be to get a rematch with Santa Clara in the final at Hinkle Fieldhouse after the way that game went down back in December. So that'd be sweet if something like that could happen. But UC Riverside's here, but I don't think that they are. Or no, they are here. I said we can talk about that later when we talk about the fuckery of the NCAA. I won't spoil that. But Dad, any other thoughts on the Braves' path in the NIT or the NIT as a whole? Unmute you.
Getting a little worried about you over there. You need some oxygen?
I'm good, brother.
Okay.
Brad, you've had this take about college bowl season, and when we talked about it during football season, and I think a lot of what's happening in football is coming to basketball in this way. And I know I've sort of talked about how bowl season sucks because all these players opt out, but is it possible that the way to look at it now is that the NIT possibly is sort of like what you say about bowl season, that it is a way to look at next season and possibly the season after that, instead of thinking about who's there and who's not there? I mean, a good performance that, like you said, it builds momentum and you can kind of see what you have. And I think that that's a healthy way to look at it now because it is what it is. The NIT used to mean something and it was prestigious. Not saying it's not, but I think that the players see it differently. But I think from a fan coaching perspective, you can take that approach and it sort of helps in thinking about it in a way that is more healthy, I guess.
Yeah, it's like Kevin said a little bit ago. This is probably one of the best NIT ranking or bracket that's been in a while, and it is. It's very solid. A lot of good high mid majors in there. So I mean, it's very very solid.
Yeah, it's a lot of teams that are playing for something. I would say, and like he mentioned, that earned their way there. It's something that the power conferences of the teams from there haven't necessarily been too excited to participate in. And so you kind of get mixed results out of them. So, I think that you're going to see some good basketball played. I mean, the NIT was exciting last year, especially, down the stretch. So, and you're right. You're right, Matt. I look at this is very similar to the way I view bowl season because and specifically Bradley with their situation, you're going to get a chance to see a lot of these young guys, and it's a way to build some momentum for the future, send the fans home, the players into the off season with some positivity, kind of a good taste in their mouth with how things went down and moving forward. And I think that, in some cases with a couple of guys on this Bradley roster, it may be a chance to show them what their role could be in the future and keep them on campus. And that's a big piece of it for us.
For sure. So, fellas, let's move on to general March Madness talk. Now, I jokingly at the top called it NCAA fuckery because it kind of is. So, Selection Sunday was this past week. And by the way, this wasn't the first year, but it's still weird to me to not have Greg Gumbel on the Selection Sunday show. So that's definitely weird for me.
Definitely.
And it is what it is. But so we have talked, Brad, about seeding the NCAA tournament selection, and we've kind of gone back and forth on resume. How does it work? What are they looking for and all that? A team that I trolled on the thumbnail is North Carolina. Now, you and I were fortunate to see them look good last year. This year, they've not looked so good in terms of the way they've looked against teams that are in the NCAA tournament. And we're talking quad one wins here. And the whole point of having those metrics is for people to look at it and kind of put into perspective what wins and losses actually mean. And they were 1-12 in their 13 attempts to beat a quad one team. Look, I'm not saying that that's the only metric you should look at, but when I look at that, I think to myself, they had 13 opportunities out of, by the way, I think they had 13 losses. 12 of them were to quad one teams. I understand that they played Duke tough. They played other teams tough a couple of times, but I just don't understand them being in outside of, as we put it, conference affiliation and money. And that sucks because that's not what the tournament is supposed to be about. And up until recently, it wasn't.
Then when you got the committee chairman in the room, I know they're supposed to leave for votes, but I did hear someone make a comment. Yeah, he was just sitting in the corner eating a muffin, while everybody stared at him while they went in and voted for his team because he got $100,000 bonus check if North Carolina made it in. So yeah, I mean a lot of collusion and just BS going, especially when a team like West Virginia gets snubbed. They had a better quad one, quad two resume than did North Carolina.
It's hard though, right? Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah.
It's hard. Like picking the teams is hard, but also now you're talking about managing pocketbooks now, and that's the sucky part for me.
Yeah, and there were probably 3 teams you could argue had better resumes than West Virginia between, better resumes than North Carolina, such as West Virginia, Indiana, and even Ohio State possibly. So, the frustrating part is that they have all these metrics they consider. I feel like it's on purpose. You have the net, you have the quad system and the quad wins, you have the Ken Pom. You have strength of schedule, and there's all these things. And I feel like they have so many because it allows them to pick and choose from team to team which ones they want to, they can cherry pick which ones they think are important, or can at least justify them including a team or not including a team or where they seed a team. I think that when you look at North Carolina, it's just a case of what I feel like is the NCAA placating to these power conferences because I think they know that their grip on big time college athletics, specifically in basketball and football, is slipping rapidly, right? And it's only a matter of time before, and football's steering this ship. It's only a matter of time before big time basketball and football breaks off into some different thing, on its own, with its own governing body and so on and so forth, separate from the NCAA. But it's like they're doing everything they can to try to placate these power conferences, I guess, keep them around as long as possible, I feel like, so they can also continue to benefit monetarily from what's happening.
Well, I got a little tidbit, a little bit off what you were saying, but I think a lot of people from the mid-majors might have the same sentiment I do. Anybody with the last name of Gavitt has no business in basketball. May Dan Gavitt take a long walk off a short plank in the middle of the Gulf of America.
I don't even know who you're
I don't even know who that is, but all I know is that they won't be watching the show.
Older guys from around here. I believe it was his dad snubbed Bradley from the NCAA in '82, which gave us enough momentum and desire to prove ourselves, and went on to, with the exception of the championship game, beat everybody by double digits. In the championship game, I think was won by 8
of the NIT, right?
Yep.
1980,
82.
82. Sorry, you said that.
Right. I mean, it was an ass kicking.
Wonderful. So
hold on, Brad. So Kevin
yes.
says a lot of things, and we don't put them all up here. Obviously, we couldn't. We wouldn't have enough time. But he does make a point here that kind of hits with me, because I've made this, and you know this, I've made this with college football and the selection committee about the criteria and about the inconsistency in how the criteria is being applied. And he talks about Indiana State last year. Quad 1 was something that they talked about a lot. Didn't have enough of it. Didn't win enough. And then North Carolina pops up, and they have, again, 1 in 12. Look, I don't care what school it is. That's an objectively bad record. You lose 12 of 13 games. It's objectively bad. It doesn't matter. It's factual. And so and again, I'm not somebody who's like, blow it all up. I pay attention not that much in terms of like major college basketball. But what I do know is that when the criteria shifts from year to year, it takes away the legitimacy of what us think about the tournament. The whole thing about the tournament was that it was fun, right? You had teams like a Bradley. You had all these mid-majors who were there. This was their shot. And remember Billy Packer went on that whole rant about Bradley getting in, and then they won 2 games, right? That's the point. And I feel like the money is driving everything. Football is driving everything to the point that we're now losing out on yet another thing that we love in the NCAA tournament, meaning less, because the Bradleys of the world aren't getting in. And it's not just a Bradley issue. There's other schools too. And so I'm on my soapbox because the criteria, the inconsistency, Kev, like I said, you say a lot, but I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, and the transfer portal, the way it has come, has really created a lot of parity throughout, from the high majors, the mid-high majors, and mid-majors. You know, we're because like you said, I mean, 06 we went in there and got to the Sweet 16, won 2 games, and it's starting to happen more and more. So they're going to come up and start just, well, you know, the 1 in 12, you know, can kick other, you know, make other teams that are actually better on paper with the resume, and they'll just blatantly do it.
Well, and that's it. Like back in 06, the Valley had 4 teams make it to the tournament. 2 of them made it to the Sweet 16. And it's like, it became very clear at that point that the mid majors have found out how to, because at that point in time it was the RPI, right? And it's like they'd found how to not game the system, but how to, you know, schedule appropriately and so on and so forth, to benefit their RPI ranking. And so the NCAA realized that, and they said, well, okay, we'll just change the metrics then. And that's what they did. But yeah, and you and I, Iceman, we saw it firsthand last year.
We did.
When we went to the NCAA tournament in Charlotte. Okay, so North Carolina, granted, it was in Charlotte, North Carolina. North Carolina was a 1 seed that was there. So, but North Carolina outnumbered every other fan base there 5-1 easily, I would say. There's a lot of powder blue in that arena. And then you had, you know, some other, Colorado State was there, you know. Colorado State, no matter where this is taking place in the country, it's not going to sell as many tickets as North Carolina. And they had a very spirited section, but it was limited. I don't know if we saw, there were probably 24 people there from St. Peter's or whatever, right?
I think we heard more about Bradley on your sweatshirt than we did about St. Peter's the entire time we were there.
No, you're 100% correct. And the other Texas and Tennessee and Michigan State were also there, but like I feel like Tennessee and Texas outnumbered Michigan State.
But all those are recognizable names, right? Like,
yes.
People know who they are. When you
that place was sold out.
It was. No, it was.
Every game.
It was. And that's what it's all about. And again, this is not to get into like everything about the NCAA tournament, but it's just something to point out. And Rick, you actually did something. You made a segue. I'm so proud of you. And you talked about the transfer portal and how it is having an effect on all levels. I think that the Valley, or in conferences like the Valley, feel it more because when your best players leave, it hurts more because it's so hard to get talent and it's so hard to get them to stay there. When you're the cream of the crop, it's easy to get people to come to your school. If you think about like all these schools, like remember we just talked about like Alabama, Georgia, and it's like really we're nitpicking over talent at that point. Both of any player going to both of those schools at a football level is good. You know what I mean? It's not the same way in the Valley. When you get players that Bradley has had, to keep them is harder now. And players don't have to sit anymore because there's opportunity to be had. But that also works in the opposite direction, where Bradley can also scoop up players at lower levels who can have a major impact. They've done that. And so that's the way that the landscape has changed. By the way, this is the most I've ever talked in an episode of Brave Stuck. I'm sorry, fellas. Go ahead.
I think it's fantastic. No, you're 100% right. I mean, the landscape's changed so much, and I'm kind of sitting here as you're talking about it and trying to like analogize it somehow. And I'm like looking at, think about if you started a business, or like, let's say you start a small business out of your garage and you built that thing up and cultivated it and it became successful, and some larger company comes along, but they don't buy it from you. They just take it, or like you go and find like a kind of you're really savvy when it comes to automobiles, and you go find like a used vehicle that needs a little work, and you get it and you tune that thing up and you fix it yourself. And you got it running like a top, and someone comes along, and now that you've got it, humming, and says, all right, okay, thank you for all your work building this thing up, and I'm just going to take it now. And like, and that's just it. I mean, the universities don't benefit at all whatsoever. And I mean, it kind of makes me kind of spiral into the thought of, what if when you did go buy a player, if you owed the university that you're taking them from some sort of compensation in the process. That'll never happen because this is going the opposite direction where it's all player driven. But it's got to be so frustrating to essentially be the minor leagues or the feeder system for the power conferences. And that's why I'll give Chase Walker and Illinois State collectively a little bit of credit. I mean, I'm sure he's getting a pretty penny, and obviously you get that pretty new truck and everything else to stay at Illinois State, and that's going to be huge for them. But just like we've celebrated our good players that have shown loyalty to the program and stuck around, again, while incentivized, which is fine, that's just the way it goes. But I have no doubt that there's bigger bags out there that they would have had opportunities to take, and they chose not to stay here. So I'll tip the cap to Chase Walker for doing that at Illinois State, as awkward as it may be.
Yeah, and I'll also say, I think there's some, a couple guys within our chat that has done this year, and that is of the players on first, second team all conference last year. There was everybody but Duke that left.
Yeah, I think so.
Or Duke and Hannah that left the conference, for not graduated but transferred to elsewhere. There's only one or two of all those guys that actually did good. The others like fell off the map, So I mean, it's a crapshoot, and I think
sure they're drying their tears with $100 bills. I'm sure.
Yeah, but a lot of them want to go think okay, well, I'll get more exposure, at somebody else. But I'm just saying, pros, scouts, if you're talented, they're going to know and they're going to observe your talent, whether you're playing at a Bradley, Valparaiso, they're going to come watch it, but it's the bag that draws them away. And then they get drawn away from a good situation to a situation that the light is now not on them, and they don't get to playing time and they don't get to shine. And then the scouts don't follow them much. But any scout in the pro is going to, that's worth their salt, is going to know who the talent and where the talent is. And that's a shame for like Valpo, because they lost two really good players, which if all that talent would stay, next year's Valley, is going to be just would be phenomenal at least the top half.
That's what you said last year. And we told you you said that last year, I thought.
Well, we had a lot of good guys go.
I mean, collectively, no, you were imploring the league for loyalty. You were, though. You were begging for loyalty. You're like, think of how good this league could be if everybody just stays.
Would say
That's
that.
what you
Well,
would say.
yeah,
that.
if they would, but
Yeah.
they didn't.
Correct. And they're not going to this year either, is what I'm telling you.
No.
It's just a new reality.
But I'm saying, and I get what you're saying, but yeah, I mean, if these guys would look at their situation that they're at and come out and be stars on their team, because that's the thing, you be a star on your team, that's going to be successful, because that 06 year in the MVC, we had what, 6 solid 20+ win teams, and I'm not talking 20, 21. I'm talking 24, 25. There's a couple like 22, but we had several teams and they played tough schedules and they were successful with those tough schedules. You can't be successful with a tough schedule now with the team that Valparaiso is going to more than likely have next year. But if you'd have had, Schweiger and All Right, plus whatever they got coming in, that's a different story.
You're right. It's a unique challenge because not only do you have to, if you want any chance at that large bid, not only do you have to essentially schedule tough, but now you also have to rebuild your roster every season. Yeah. And it's making it nearly impossible for mid-majors. And that's not a woe is me, it's just the reality of it. And I think even the most elitist of power conference fans could acknowledge that that's true.
And the task for Bradley for next year is, the winning culture, coach recruiting to, the fit for the program, bring those guys in and then be able to coach them, and the players come in and accept all that they've got around them. And, we could continue to be 20+ win team next year.
Right. And go ahead,
Rick. I think fundamentally speaking, let's just back it up a second. I think fundamentally speaking, name, image, and likeness is good, right? Because I think the players for a long time gave to these universities, didn't get as much back as they maybe should have, right? So we had a makeup call with name, image, and likeness, transfer portal, all that stuff. Now, what are we, 5 years on here to this whole thing? I mean, at least with the transfer portal and the way that it's looked now, name, image, and likeness. And there are no guardrails still. And I think that's a fundamental issue because, Rick, what you're saying is it'd be great to bring in these guys, have them absorb the Bradley culture, all that good stuff and stay. But there is nothing to incentivize them to stay, even if they take the bag, because there'll be another and another and another. And there's no contractual obligation in order for them to stay the way that there could be. I think that's where, fundamentally speaking, the makeup call needs to now go to something a little bit more realistic, something a little bit more workable for these coaches, because it's a system that will fall apart if players are just constantly leaving. It doesn't matter how many teams are in these big conferences. They're just all jockeying for the same players. They're going to be going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And who does that benefit, right? That doesn't benefit any program, any singular program. It doesn't even benefit the NCAA as a whole or like college basketball as a whole because there is nothing to hold on to. And so until they figure that out, you're going to see exactly what you see this year and last year, and it's going to continue to happen. And we're going to have this conversation annually. Please stay in the Valley. And they'll be like, nope, because I can make more money elsewhere. And you know what? The coaches are doing the same thing. They've been doing that for decades, and they're not faultless in this either. If you look at the Valley right now, we're talking about McCollum possibly leaving already, right? 1 year, lightning in a bottle, that's it. And he's like, I'll take the bag somewhere else. How about DeVries? Left last year, leaving again, going to Indiana. It's becoming an epidemic. And I just want to say, I have a take here. Indiana basketball, one of the most overrated jobs in all of sports. I said it.
I think on the heels of you saying that, what I was going to say is no matter where you are, there's only a few places that would not be included in this. If Indiana calls, you pick up the phone, right? I think that it's just one of those jobs that, because if you can be the guy that can go in there and get that thing going, you are going to be a god to those people.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying that Indiana and the job and the program has had a perception that hasn't been realistic in like 30 years.
That's kind of like Notre Dame in the like the 90s and the early 2000s a little bit, right?
Yes, similar.
Football-wise.
But Notre Dame has at least produced recently. And I mean like really produced recently.
Right.
I think the last time that Indiana produced anything realistic was what, 2002? I was a freshman in college. That's when they went to the national championship, lost to Maryland. I mean, it's been a long time since they have been, I use this, relevant. Now, they're relevant in the Midwest, but I'm talking about on a national scale. When you talk about
Sure.
Indiana basketball, I mean, if they were relevant, they'd have made it in. You know what I mean? Like, they would not have been left out. And I'm not saying it's a bad job. I'm not saying DeVries shouldn't take the job. All I'm saying is that for me, when it comes down to, like, when they say the U is back, I'm like, no, they're not. Like, they're not. You know what I mean? Like, that's not a prestigious job. That's all that I say. I'm ignorant. What do I know?
Well, and Kevin just put the answer in the chat. They basically doubled, or they increased DeVries' salary and doubled his NIL pool overnight.
Of course.
And you know, and that's why you take that job, right?
Absolutely.
And
he should sign it all day long. I'd sign it, for Christ's sake.
Right. And I think that, and even in McCollum's case, sure, you could say he could bet on himself and sit there and build that thing up and wait for the perfect job to roll along. Because we've discussed at length why maybe Iowa is not the perfect job. But if you're the coach that everyone believes you are, and I think that he is, you believe that, hey, I can go get that done there. I mean, it's like, if you can go coach the Big Ten, it's like, what if you pass that up and then Sturtz is going to leave anyways, and then next year you have two of your big players get hurt, and next thing you know, you finish fifth in the league, and it's just like, there's a lot of things out of your control that could happen. We talked about that in the chat with, that's why you don't say. We talked a lot about in the chat about what was I going to say? Sorry, I peeked in the chat at Kevin there and got sidetracked. Oh my goodness.
You talking about Wardle taking one of these jobs?
No, well, I mean, that's been discussed, and I do think, I mean, if you get a chance to go coach in the Big Ten, I think you take it. And I don't. Yes, there's something to be said for loyalty and everything else, but I think it's like, when that opportunity presents itself, there's so many things, like I said, out of your control that you take it. And we talked about, like, Wardle in 2020 when the tournament got canceled. Like, there's a very good possibility, I think, that if had Bradley gotten in the tournament and won a couple games, and that was a team that was capable of doing so, he very well, that may have been like his time, right? And then the tournament gets canceled, and then when we come back in the COVID year, like, the wheels fall off. We've got roster problems. We got guys in trouble. I mean, and it's like, it wasn't like, it was like, okay, we'll be fine. I mean, like, the program regressed a little bit for a couple of years, and it was like, okay, well, we got to build this thing up and get it going again. And he has, and we're here, right? We're moving in the right direction. But if Indiana calls, and whether, again, like Kramer said, whether it's Ben McCollum or if it's Brian Wardle, like, Indiana calls, or Iowa calls, you take the job. Iowa calls, you take the job. I don't know.
Do not disagree with you.
I want to
whatsoever.
learn. I want to learn a little bit more about what the deal is with this revenue sharing.
Well, I mean, it's going to be across the board thing. The thing is, Iowa just has they are above average in a lot of sports, and they just have a lot of mouths to feed, I think, is what it comes down to. And it's been talked about again.
That could be a hindrance.
In the chat, it's been talked about. I mean, you could make an argument that men's basketball is not the number one winter sport at the University of Iowa.
No, I know that for a fact.
I mean? Like, it's they sell out in the same arena they play basketball, and they sell out every home wrestling match. 14,000 people or whatever that place holds, or I mean, nearly. I mean, it's so. I'm not saying I think if you got a winner going there, you wouldn't be playing second fiddle per se, because basketball is the more popular sport overall. But right now, I do think you do have a little bit of a hole that you got to dig yourself out of as far as that goes.
I don't disagree with you that these guys shouldn't take these jobs. Like, I'm not a moron, okay? Like, I know that they should take these jobs. Like I said, I would take these jobs. It was just Indiana. I always think it's funny just because of the narrative that follows it. And I think that about other schools too. So it's not necessarily a specific knock on Indiana alone. But the other thing that's on here that we want to talk about was reshaping the Valley, or potentially reshaping the Valley. So we're going to be losing Missouri State. We're going to be down in 11. And conference realignment is still kind of churning in the background. Football is driving a lot of this. But what does the Valley do is the real question.
I think they're going to probably just stay at 11. But, I mean, of few of the choices that are out there, I mean, from the basketball sense of it and with rankings, I mean, if you take like or the net ranking right now, you got to take St. Thomas. They are heads and tails better than Wright State, Northern Kentucky, Milwaukee, any of those teams. They're going to have a new facility, and so that would be, to me, from a basketball side of it.
It's the high risk, high reward pick. If they do decide to add this year, because they are new to D1. Is next year their first year they're eligible for postseason, or were they eligible this year?
Next year.
Yeah.
I think it was next year.
Okay. So, I mean, like I said, high risk, high reward, because you're talking about, I imagine St. Thomas is probably a pretty prominent hockey school. Without knowing, it's in Minnesota, right? So you think that hockey's pretty big there. So again, another situation where it might not even be their top winter sport.
They've had some good basketball teams last couple of years.
Right. No, they absolutely
in the transition.
You could get a chance to get that team in early and keep them around for a while. I think that's a good pick. I think that there's a lot of things to like about that. I feel like the consensus is growing more and more towards they're going to stand pat at 11.
Omaha's interesting
right now.
Kevin's saying,
yeah, and I think Omaha might be another one that's got hockey too that I've heard mentioned before. You can correct me, Kevin, if I'm wrong, but that just comes down to the whole mouths to feed thing when it comes to money and everything else. And if your big donors are pouring money into the hockey program, it's going to be tough to fund the basketball program. But they're in the NCAA tournament right now, so I guess they're doing okay.
You have to think about the future, not necessarily next season or the season after, but I don't know how many football schools are left in the Valley, but I think football, again, drives so much of this that these football schools are going to be enticed to leave for that reason. And so do they have to sort of think ahead a little bit?
Yeah, probably. I think you got to find more. And again, I mean, when it comes down to the voting process, the football schools are going to vote a certain way, I imagine. But I think, Bradley needs to vote in their best interest, and that is bringing in schools that basketball is their number one thing. Especially, and I think now you could argue that basketball is the number one thing at Murray State, but they still have a football program. I think it's only a matter of time before Illinois State and possibly Northern Iowa follow suit with Missouri State.
Southern's got a good,
and yes, SIU is the same deal.
Indiana State.
And I don't know if they've been how successful. So I know Illinois State's always fairly solid. So I can't speak to, I guess, how good some of these football programs have been historically. But
I think it'll be about by necessity, though. Yeah, like they're just going to get pulled because there's going to be slots to fill somewhere. So it might not necessarily matter how good they are.
Right. Well, and it seems like, the MAC is maybe attempting, the MAC's taking UMass, so maybe they're looking at some sort of expansion, and like
that's been spoken about.
Indiana State, Illinois State, Southern Illinois, Northern, I mean, they're all smack dab in the MAC footprint. So
the MAC is the only conference that plays 7 days a week.
So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. And we haven't heard anything yet, which again makes me think that we stand pat at 11. It'll be interesting to see what they decide to do with the tournament at that point. I mean, there's plenty of ways you can handle it.
Sure.
I said maybe just tell the team number 11 to stay home, but anymore though, I don't think anybody does that. You want the ticket sales and the revenue of bringing those people, even if it's just for one game. So on and so forth. But it'll be interesting, though, to see how the landscape changes over the next couple of years. Do we see some sort of like basketball first private school type mid-major level league form here in the Midwest? Kind of a Big East light type of conference, something like that. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities that are out there for sure. And everything's changing day by day with conference realignment.
Absolutely. The whole landscape is changing. But one thing that is not changing, Wednesday, 7 p.m., get your ass out there, support the team. I'll be watching on ESPN Plus, and hopefully we'll be doing a show on the back end of a win against Northern Alabama. So do you guys have anything else to add before we get everybody out for their Tuesday night?
Nope, my back's hurting. I got to get out of here.
Great. So that is perfect. A perfect swan song. Brad, what about you?
Oh, just, again, always happy to do this. Thanks for the support, everybody. Looking forward to seeing everybody at Carver tomorrow night. Stop by, say hi, have a beverage, whatever the case may be. I'm actually kind of looking forward to, with all the stuff going on right now with DeVries, McCollum, I'm going to tune into that search season when we get off of here and hear what's going on that side of things. So looking forward to that. It's a fun show for any of you guys that are out there on X Spaces, but no.
Chattanooga, Middle Tennessee's second overtime, 43 seconds.
Hey, what's the score of the UNC game? are just throttling whoever they're playing?
Yeah,
That's
that's
probably what's happening.
47-23.
Of course they are.
Perfect.
They're
They're
going to go to the Sweet
I was
16.
going to say, no, they're going to be in the Elite Eight or the Final Four. What the hell are you talking about?
That's what's going to happen.
Kiss of death for this
All right.
show. We either say that
Love
they're
you
going to
guys.
be great, or we either say that they're going to be bad and they're actually going to be good. But I want to thank everybody, as we always do. This was a fun show. We hope that you had fun. Like we said, get out there, support, be safe, and whatever it is that you're doing. And hopefully we'll be talking to you soon. Thanks, everybody. This is Braves Talk. The opinions and viewpoints expressed on I&C Sports are those of Matt Freites, Brad Powell, and their guests, and not necessarily those of the Matty Ice Media Network. I&C Sports is exclusively owned by Matt Freites and Brad Powell and is brought to you by the Matty Ice Media Network.